The UEE would like to remind you that anyone not properly wearing their spacesuit will be... Actually, there's no penalty for that. If you get yourself killed because you're too stupid to wear a spacesuit in space, the UEE can't help you. Please, fly safely. Welcome one, welcome all, welcome to another exciting edition of the intro to Tales of Citizens, number 3 for episode number 8. I am Bridger, I will be your host for this evening, and we have got a great show for you here today. I'm glad you got a hold of the program, however you may have found it. Tell a friend or two, won't you? We're trying to get the word out there. And today we've got a mishmash of a show. We've got all kinds of things to talk about, from feedback from our listeners to other questions and things that we've sort of been building up over time. So thanks, guys, for joining us. Let me introduce my co-hosts, Gray from Team Legacy, joining us here today. Welcome, sir.
Afternoon, Bridger.
Afternoon indeed. And Calathulu from another place where it's afternoon right now. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Also, Unrepentant Gaming. There we go.
Oh, yes.
Got the plug in there. So today is going to be a great show. We've got a lot of stuff to cover, but I did want to start with our typical Life in the Verse segment. This is a segment where we simply talk about stuff that we've been doing while waiting for Star Citizen, even if it means refreshing the Star Citizen page every 10 minutes.
God.
Callie, what have you been doing recently? Anything interesting?
Well, I picked up Banished, which you've probably seen on Steam from here and there. The city building simulation game, kind of a mix of Anno and SimCity, and it goes bad just like Dwarf Fortress. So you've got these death spirals and whatnot. Yeah, it's a good time. Or when a tornado rolls through and kills 99 of 100 citizens, that's also a good time. So other than that, this weekend has been not a gaming weekend. It's been a weekend of trying to nurse my cat back to health. She was attacked by 2 dogs.
He said cat. I think we just picked up a dozen listeners.
I know. We just got all of Reddit rolling through here. So she's looking better than she was a couple days ago. But there's many a late night here at the house.
Well, it's glad that she's getting better there. So Gray, what have you got new on the docket?
Well, particularly, I have scheduled my trip out to the East Coast. I'm going to actually be in Boston for just the day before PAX.
Not for PAX. Ladies and gentlemen, understand what's happening here. He booked a flight to Boston for the day before PAX. Not PAX.
Just for the Star Citizen event, because I have the real PAX here in Seattle come August.
Oh, he said it.
Very true.
He said it.
Yeah.
The real PAX.
Hey, they live here. It's better. It's just better.
All right. Fair enough. So what I've been doing recently is spending, basically all of my time that I'm not spending playing League, because that's an addiction that I have to satiate or else I can't function. So that has to happen. But other than that, what I have been doing is putting together the lore episodes for the main Alpha Boot Camp. And I know these have been a long time coming. People have been looking for these for a considerable amount of time, and I finally got them put together. And I'm very happy with it, as long as the ad is finished here. I wanted to have. Let me ask you this question. Why does YouTube say, hey, you, content creator, you can't refresh your own page to give yourself ad revenue? That's illegal. But they still show me the ads. I'm logged in watching a video that my account posted. Why does it show me an ad every time I go to fix an annotation?
Because YouTube wants the ad revenue. You don't get any. Let's be clear.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Makes it all better.
This is a series of 3 videos that actually go through the entirety of the lore behind Star Citizen, based on the time capsule and a bunch of the other writers' guides on the website, robertspaceindustries.com. And it took me a long time to put it all together, but once I did, it came together really well. 102, the history of the second millennium. The 20th century was a time of great change for humanity. I had to find an auditorium. and book it for a while and just do a bunch of recordings there, and then I had to edit that and find out I made mistakes and then go back and book the auditorium again. Yeah, it was a whole thing. That was a joke.
It was a labor
by
of
the way.
love. A labor of
I didn't
love.
actually book an auditorium. There's going to be people emailing me going, they make post-production
Sound effects
effects that do that. You don't? Okay.
But it wouldn't be authentic, Bridger. That's
But listen, so if anybody out there's too busy or just doesn't like reading lore-based stuff, you've got 3 videos that are about 10 minutes long, and they go through all of that important data that gives you the breakdown of what happened from back at the beginning of 2000 to 2944, which is where we are now in the Star Citizen calendar. It's a good time. All right, let's move on. We've got a couple different sections here today. We're going to start with the feedback section because we did have someone give us some feedback via YouTube that I thought was particularly interesting. So here's his question. Quote, I wonder if people will stick around with an org or even the game entirely if they keep quote-unquote losing. People in general hate to lose. For example, what if someone keeps getting jumped by pirates and consistently loses their ships/cargo, declares, pirates are ruining the game, and just quits? Or if life is too tough for pirates, people would quit pirating, but then peacekeepers would have nothing to do besides killing NPCs. If this happens to enough people, wouldn't that be bad for the game community as a whole? I guess this would be a balancing issue on CIG's part, end quote. And that comes to us from Bert's Bees via YouTube. So I thought that brought up a very interesting point. You have a very open, sandboxy game, and they have mentioned they're going to try to have some pseudo matchmaking stuff built into it, but I can't imagine it's going to be able to have the same kind of impact as like the MMR system in League of Legends or StarCraft 2.
Yeah, I can't necessarily see them being able to give a 100% level playing field to everybody, but it's a game with ganking and PvP, and you're dealing with the same sort of thing you were with WoW. They're just not going to count on people leaving the moment that they get ganked.
Well, yeah, and I mean the other thing is, as far as is it SIG's job to make it all fair and everyone wins sometimes? I mean, it's SIG's job to balance the game. Their role ends when you can create a trade caravan that's going to go point A to point B with a bunch of ships, or you can make a pirate fleet, or whatever it's going to be. That other people can make and balance it out. Traders shouldn't be too powerful, but they should have cargo, etc. If you're going to run something that is not a great idea, like a Starfarer solo with no guns, in low security space, that's not a you're going to win scenario. That's a scenario where you set yourself up to lose. So I don't see that SIG's job to let someone have a chance of success in that kind of thing. As long as the game is well balanced, fighters fight fighters, bombers fight bombers, traders don't get too much money with every run.
On a more minor note, Bert's Bees did ask about if people would stick around with an org if they were consistently losing. That seems like a valid question. I think that organizations that don't see any growth, that don't see consistently successful operations, unless it's a bunch of real-life friends who are just playing for the sake of playing, I'm not sure those sorts of organizations would stay together. It just seems like a kind of losing proposition. I'm sure anyone who's played an MMO has seen dozens upon dozens of organizations on whatever server they were on dissolve every year for exactly that reason. No success, probably not going to stick around.
At the same time, the game itself is a quote-unquote sandbox game, right? It's a game where there's no guarantees. It's not going to be fair necessarily. A bunch of people could gang up on a bunch of less people because it's supposed to be an adventure, right? It's supposed to feel like what is about to happen to me when I log in for this next hour is not scripted. And that's what makes it interesting and exciting. Of course, that's a double-bladed sword because it also means that that adventure could be cut short very quickly. Yeah. So, I mean, the problem here, that as I see it, is the thing that creates adventure stories the game type that makes adventure stories really well is something like a Dungeons and Dragons, like a tabletop RPG, because in that you have a game master whose job is essentially to push the players to their limit, but in the end you're supposed to provide an experience that allows them to win, unless they do something super stupid. Like you're creating a challenging environment that that are designed for them to overcome, like any single player experience, really. But that is also procedurally generated, for lack of a better term, by the GM as things go on. Now, when you go into this MMO adventure land, it's also quote unquote procedurally generated, but it's not balanced by any single person trying to make sure that it's winnable. So that's the advantage and disadvantage there.
But then again, if people do end up, quitting the game, they're actually just been quitting the private universe, because they're also private servers. So if you have an org that's much friends and they just keep getting griefed, then you have the option to create your own world to play in. So going back to the, if your organization's not doing well and you don't necessarily know your role, you'll be able to, like, create your own private server with your own rule set, maybe just with friends fighting NPCs. So I don't think anyone's going to really quit the game because pirates are ruining it, so much as you're going to run into people that just don't like the private universe that much. They don't like the challenge of it or what have you.
Yeah, that's fair enough. What it really comes down to is that the game, I think, is catering to people who are buying into, well, theoretically, because I'm sure that there are a lot of people that weren't buying into it when they pledged to the game.
Actually,
but
that's a recurring theme I've seen, is people that say, hey, I pledged for this game. I didn't know there was going to be a non-consensual PvP component. That just kills it for me. I want out. And, that's usually the Kickstarter, for example, that wasn't necessarily clear. So I just don't necessarily blame people for having that opinion.
Well, there was a lot of stuff that wasn't clear because the game had just barely been. I mean, obviously they had a tech demo for all intents and purposes, but the game itself, we didn't have a whole lot of information. We still don't have a whole lot of information.
But we have more now than we did, and we know some things, such as that there will be a PvP slider and what that model, in theory, is going to be. So I can see where some of the complaint comes. But again, the argument is very simple. There's a private universe. You are welcome to use it. There's a private server, you're welcome to use it, versus the public universe where everyone plays agreeing to one rule set. So I mean, I like the model they've adopted for that.
Fair enough. All right. That is a conversation we're probably going to have to keep bringing up as we go on, because it is, I think, to some degree, CIG's job to try and make that balance as close as possible. If one particular role, as he points out, if piracy is just too hard, too punishing, there's just not going to be enough pirates, and then the other side isn't going to be happy either. So there is some balancing as to the different types of game that affect each other. If mining is the only major lucrative thing, and that's what everybody does, then nobody's going to do combat because it costs too much. You don't want that, obviously. So
although that tempts me to go now and attack mining ships to steal their cargo.
Well, that's true, but that depends on how defendable they are. But again,
it does. Yeah, it's a circular argument there.
All balance.
Welcome to Tales of Tautology. I think that's what we're on now. All right, so what also caught my eye as I was going through the forums, and what the key to all this is choice, right? I said, what if people get into situations where they can't win their own adventure, and they chose to go there, and that's what's important. So I was reading about choice in the forums, and it made me a little frustrated. And then I kept reading, and it made me a little angry. And when I get angry and frustrated, I got to vent. And when I vent, it's called a Bridger rant. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm on the forums. I'm reading these threads where people are saying, listen, you can have your thing, I can have my thing. Why don't we just give everybody the choice that they want instead of trying to restrict it to good game design? Now, they didn't say that, but that's what I was actually reading in my head. The problem is that choices have to be meaningful, people. Choice isn't automatically a good thing. Just because you have tons of choices doesn't mean it's good, solid game design. Let me give you a couple of good examples. Imagine a first-person shooter where you were unkillable. You could go through walls. You could just touch things and they die. You could pick up everything on the level instantaneously. That's a game with no restrictions. So your choices are completely meaningless because you can just press a button to win the game. You have to have restrictions on your choice in order for the game to become fun. Typically, those restrictions come in the shape of physical rules and laws like gravity and you can't pass through solid objects. Those things work well because as humans, we already know how that works. Hey, look, my hands don't go through each other because, mass and electrons and stuff. So really what it comes down to is restrictions are good as long as you do have some choices and they make sense. Now, another thing is that every choice that gets put in takes time. It takes time from the developer. So if you say, oh, well, it's not this or that, put them both in. You're delaying the launch of the game for the 1-2% of people that want your choice. Now, obviously, if there's 100% of the people want the choice, it's a no-brainer, but that's my point. You have to balance those as a game designer and say, there's a lot of people that are going to be upset if we leave this particular option out. Maybe we need a delay in order to get it in there. But that's something that has to be balanced. You can't just say more is better, choice is better, so it's a clear, obvious solution. No! Bad forum goer. The last point here is that more isn't always better. The thing that drives me insane about games like Battlefield 4 and PlanetSide 2 is they have so many guns that the distinction between any two guns becomes almost meaningless. If you had like this assault rifle that's got really good range but really slow rate of fire, and this assault rifle that's got short range but fast rate of fire, those have very distinct roles where you might want to use them in and play styles that fit. But when this one has 20 faster RPM and slightly more recoil than that one, what the hell's the point of slicing them up that thin? At that point, your choices become arbitrary and they stop mattering, really. And people are just going to go with the one that they feel is most optimal within the 3 or 4 that match their playstyle instead of the one that matches their playstyle. That doesn't make any sense to me, and it drives me insane. That's what also... I think I broke my rant button in my head. All right. But yeah, that's... They keep adding more guns to PS2.
So what I'm hearing is more is always better.
I can disconnect you right now. I have the power. In this case,
find where you live.
The choice is mine, sir. There's a button. I'm looking at it right here. I'm hovering the mouse over it. It says, "Do it, do it." The angels of my better nature, as it were. All right. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that. What are your thoughts on PlanetSide 2's amalgamation of guns?
It's gotten to be ridiculous. And the most recent patch actually introduced two new sniper rifles per faction, one faction specific and an NS shared across all the different factions. The changes that they're putting in to make this a quote-unquote new weapon are often so arbitrary and small that it'd be very difficult to justify spending money on them.
When the game came out, a ton of the weapons were sharing the exact same model. They were too lazy to even make a new model for the gun. They just retextured it.
Well, and all the NS weapons still share models across factions too. But yeah, I've been playing a lot of PlanetSide 2 recently. I mean, the choices in guns is not so much, for me at least playing it, is not so much about, the little miniature stats. It's just how it feels. I like to try out a gun, see how it feels. That's what I'm going to use from that then on. And then I just use it until I Araxium with it, which so far is actually just the Anchor. The New Conglomerate's light machine gun. But yeah, there are just so many of the guns that only a few of them are really unique. Like the Phoenix, for example, a camera-guided rocket. You fire it, then you guide the thing in.
That one's pretty fun. That
one's
unique.
A lot of fun.
That's also a legitimate choice.
Yeah, exactly.
You do a little less damage, but you're way, way more accurate. You can go around corners. That's good game design at that point.
And then there's Lashers, which is like a light machine gun kind of thing that fires a ton of shots.
Oh,
but
that's
they're
the
all
Wub
little
Wub gun,
miniature
right?
AOEs. Yeah, that's the well, I won't go into the other name for it.
The
when
dubstep
you're
gun.
No, it's if you're being shot at by it, you refer to it as a sperm cannon.
Oh.
So,
So Ashlyn in the chat says, "What about the Borderlands guns?" And I actually had a note about that, and I forgot to mention it.
yeah.
There's a reason that Penny Arcade called Borderlands 2 a arrow comparison engine. I'll just leave it at that. Search Borderlands 2
Yeah.
Penny Arcade arrow comparison engine. You'll find the strip. Anyway,
So they,
Yeah.
they have they've overdone it in PlanetSide 2 as far as the number of guns goes, but at the same time there are some very very unique choices in that set. So it's just kind of finding the right one at that point.
let's go back to bring this back to PlanetSide 2 now, because I believe the same argument could
You
be
mean Star
made.
Citizen?
Yes, I mean Star Citizen. The same argument could be made about Star Citizen. If you have a billion gazillion ships, and the difference between this one and that one is this one has racing stripes, then obviously that's also a problem. So
We're already seeing that in the forums. I don't like it because why would I ever take my Caterpillar as opposed to a Constellation? Because the Constellation costs just as much, but it has more cargo space. It does the same roles, but it doesn't. We don't know what the fuck they do yet. Stop it.
somebody in the YouTube chat, actually, Nilla said, "Do you think the Constellation would make the Freelancer unusable because of the option to fit a tractor beam and have a big hold in the Constellation?" He's saying, why would you ever use a Freelancer when the Constellation exists? The answer to that question is located on many
Cheaper.
hundreds of threads in the RSI forum, but the answer
Hundreds
that
might be an understatement.
yeah,
That's-
we don't. The answer is that we don't actually know right now. But what has been theorized is, well, number one, the fact is the Constellation cannot plot new jump points. It's too big. The Freelancer
Already
is
been stated, it just can't.
the
Yeah.
Freelancer is the largest ship that can plot a new jump point. All the ships can go through existing jump points, but only the Freelancer can plot new jump points. That's what makes it a better exploration ship.
That's what Crew says.
There's also some Xi'an technology in the Freelancer. There's also the
Thrusters,
fact that
specifically.
yes, there's also the fact that the Freelancer costs less to buy.
Yes.
So your choice isn't always Constellation or Freelancer. That's your choice if you're a rich guy. Your choice if you're a guy trying to just level up from your 300i to a bigger ship might be Freelancer.
Well, and if
Yeah.
you're going to walk into a dogfight module, then I would probably always take the Constellation. Unless
Yeah.
there's some compelling factor, but that's not what the game is. The game is not all one big dogfight. It's
Now-
how do I actually make money?
The other thing that people have theorized about or hypothesized about is that another distinction between ships might be fuel efficiency. Sure, the Constellation is
Cost,
bigger,
yeah.
it can fit more guns, it's got its own little fighter alongside, but that means a lot more mass. And that means that the way that they have those engines on there, it's just less efficient for long-range cargo transport. It costs you maybe twice as much to carry the same amount of cargo over X distance. Well, if you're going and using that for light mercantile versus the Freelancer or the Fat Lancer, then maybe
Man, the Fat Lancer.
the Fat Lancer, maybe that's going to be something to consider. Or maybe the Freelancer's just faster than you. You don't know the Constellation's faster. We don't know the mechanics yet. Maybe the Freelancer, even though it has smaller engines, might be faster because it is less heavy and also Xi'an technology.
Or has
I-
an afterburner.
I should probably disclaim I have a Freelancer, so I'm very defensive about it.
See, and I have a Constellation. I'm very defensive of it in that it's a Constellation, and it's just the best thing out there. But that
I'm sure
aside,
everyone's going to have a Constellation eventually. It seems
No
like the
arguing.
ship you should just have.
Well, it is the Millennium Falcon, as described by Chris Roberts.
Yeah.
But I mean, more to the point, I mean, there are so many variables in how this is going to work that there are dozens of reasons to have a Freelancer and enjoy a Freelancer. I'm looking forward to the Constellation variants. I want to see that long-range cargo with no fighter on it whatsoever, something like that. But we'll see what happens.
Indeed.
But yeah, it's there. We don't know enough about the game to say why would you ever take one ship over another. I mean, we have some insights. I mean, I would always take a Hornet over, say, a Cutlass for a dogfight for one particular role, but not for everything. I certainly want to take a Hornet to go and do some long-range trading. That would be insane.
Yes. Okay, so now let's move on to our bite-sized data analysis. Now what we normally do when we take a data analysis segment of the show is we take a single aspect of Star Citizen and we try to bury into it and think up all of the interesting questions we can and try to answer them. This week we're taking a small break from that because I was working on the lore episodes and they're finally done. So next week we're going to be jumping into exploration and detection, which is a really interesting topic. And even though a lot of it's going to be speculation, we do have some facts based on developer comments that we're going to be talking about. It's going to be a good time. So, this week we're taking a time out to just sort of go over a bunch of small questions that don't necessarily have a lot to do with each other. So, this week we're starting with a statement that I got off of somewhere. I don't even remember. It wound up on my Star Citizen document, my brainstorming document. And this was, I believe, referring to other MMOs. It was referring to MMO design and how you have to, what you have to consider when you're designing MMOs. And the statement is thus, quote, "Players will always do the most efficient action possible, even if it is the least entertaining." Unquote. Now, this is an interesting postulate, I guess you could say. I was immediately, after pointing this out to somebody in Team Legacy, said, oh, well, that's not true at all, because I've seen people take a sniper rifle into a map that's all about close quarters fights, and it's clearly less efficient than taking a submachine gun, but they want to use a sniper rifle, so they do it anyway.
It is kind of that perfect knowledge fallacy. Okay, so this is, and I'm going to get lambasted, I'm sure, on the forums, because I am not an economics major in any way, shape, or form, but the concept is this. In a free market, the market will always be priced according to supply and demand, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But all of that assumes that every operator in that market has perfect knowledge of the market. Where businesses and banks and everything else makes their money is actually when they know what you don't know, and vice versa. That's why insider trading is such a big problem in the stock market, right? So if I'm new to the game, or even playing for a while, entering a new system, I'm not going to have perfect knowledge of the system. I can do all the research I want. I'll be more informed than maybe anyone else, but it won't be perfect knowledge. I don't know what I'm facing, so I won't have the opportunity to always do the best thing for me at the time.
This was also a big thing for people playing the auction house in games like WoW and Guild Wars 2. People would go out there and they'd be grinding out these specific items, and they'd be getting thousands of them to go sell, and you know what? That was not the most efficient thing to be doing, but it was what they knew how to do. Mm-hmm. It was a way that they knew they could make some money to get whatever they saw as economic progression in the games. They were definitely not doing the most efficient thing, and a lot of the time they could even lose money on some of that time, doing repair bills and everything else. But
yeah, not to shoot your postulate down, but we're shooting it down.
Well, it's certainly true, at least I think to some extent, if you as an MMO developer make something, some kind of goal, the goal being like legendaries in Guild Wars 2 or something else, people will spend a long time doing things they don't want to do because it's the most efficient way of getting that legendary. They could go about getting the legendary just by playing the game and questing and having fun, but instead they'll stay in the same place and kill the same mob for 30 hours in order to get the X number of whatever in order to build a legendary, because that's the most efficient way to get it.
In some cases,
that's
that
just
is
it.
the game design.
The game design made that the easiest way to get the legendary as well as the most efficient. And I think that there has to be a really careful distinction drawn there. If you're saying that the most efficient way to get something is to kill one mob for 30 straight hours and just sort of sit there even if you don't want to, that tells me you probably made it a little bit too easy to get a legendary doing it that way. If your idea was to have people go out into the world and have, an even chance of getting this specific drop in all these various areas, you need to make sure that there isn't a way for players to exploit the system that you put in play. And with Guild Wars 2, a lot of it was that. It was people trying to exploit, well, I know I can get a whole bunch of rare items or exotic items by killing this specific mob or the specific group of mobs again and again and again and again. And they would put them all into the forge and see if they got the precursor, and that was the game. I mean, for people who were trying to get it, that was basically the game. if you're trying to make something that's compelling gameplay for some version of progression, whether that's economic or player progression, you should try to understand that yes, people will find whatever the way is that's most lucrative. And if it's more lucrative by a huge margin because it's way, way easier to deal with, well, of course people are going to play it that way. But if you make it all the kind of choice you've been talking about with the guns in some of these games, where it really doesn't necessarily matter one way or the other from these flat numbers, people are going to just go do a variety of things. And really that variety is probably what you're looking for more than let's have everybody focus on this one spot.
Okay, so let's move on to the next small topic then. CIG intends to restrict communications along speed of light levels. Meaning, if there's some kind of major NPC event or attack or something, the news won't be, the Spectrum won't be reporting it several systems away immediately. It'll take time for that news to travel. Or if you put up a sell order for something or a buy order for something, it won't immediately show up several systems away if somebody searches the Spectrum to find out. At least that's the goal, the idea so far. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, players can simply look at their screen and talk to somebody using normal communication immediately, instantaneously over Ventrilo or TeamSpeak or just over an instant messaging client. How are they going to reconcile trying to enforce this speed of light limit within the game and also having people able to break that limit all the time whenever they want?
Well, it could just be that you... Okay, so in the case of like missions, it's the in-game engine takes care of it. If an economic mission shows up, say in New Pittsburgh, and you're out in Terra and you don't see it for 30 minutes, someone says that there is a mission there, you'll have to go to New Pittsburgh to get it. So, problem solved. When it comes to price of goods, that's hard. I would say that they should simply explain away the price of goods knowledge as, faster than light communications, quantum entangled computers over vast light years of distance as opposed to micrometers like we have today with electrons, and explain it that way. But because again, players will talk. I mean, Dark Age of Camelot had this problem back in the day with RVR and Dark Age of Camelot. You had no knowledge of anyone around you, but you would have spies in these different realms who would say, okay, I'm running with a Zerg from Hibernia out here in this frontier, and then in comes the Albion group, wipes them out, and then rolls back out, and no one's aware there's a spy in their midst who's doing this to help the group out. They assumed players wouldn't talk, and they did.
Go ahead, Gray.
To a degree, I don't think that having players talk is going to be a major issue so far as the actual gameplay is concerned. Mm. The real places where players talking will be advantageous are in PvP situations. Exactly what you're talking about with spies, and someone's out on a mining run and they get attacked, and, well, okay, now their buddies all know they're getting attacked, and lo and behold, from every star system that's within X number of minutes, here they come.
But that's also in game a little bit too, because if you have NPCs on your ship, the model they've talked about is they can pop into the NPCs and help gun the turrets and that.
Of course. But that's going to be more of a player gameplay focus, and I don't think that's really immersion breaking. When you're starting to talk about realm dispatch and news, and let's say the Vanduul attack a specific planet or something along those lines, I think the goal of CIG is to make events that are that big or that are that meaningful effectively, disperse slowly to the next systems, or disperse at the speed of light, or whatever the speed of the information drones are going out, or you name it. In those situations, I don't actually see player communication being a giant factor in how those things resolve. And when you're talking about economics, and you're saying, well, players are going to place an order here, and it's going to take this many hours for it to reach this place, and screw with the market over here, or whatever it is. That makes the assumption that nobody else is doing anything during that time frame. So if players could find completely isolated systems where nobody else is delivering materials, nobody else is affecting the economy, this might be a really big problem. I just don't see that being the case when the majority of the economy is going to actually be built by NPCs.
Well, Dave Young was in the YouTube chat was asking What does that mean? That an order will not show immediately if it's been filled? So I truck my cargo of missiles or missile parts or whatever halfway across the galaxy only to get there and find out that somebody else already filled the order. I think what
Might
that
be.
actually, that system has to, because of the problem he just pointed out, the only way I can envision that kind of system working is some factory, whether NPC or player, whatever, puts out an order. I need this many widgets. Somebody somewhere accepts that order. The order has to instantaneously disappear from the system. From a game mechanics point of view, it has to work like that. Even if I know that they won't be able to force
Third-party
it.
escrow kind of thing.
Or the factory has to accept anybody who accepted that contract. It might be a system where you end up with excess materials at these places. They're saying, well, we need this many missiles. We need 700 missiles.
And 5-6 guys show up with 700 missiles. We're like, I don't have any place to store all these.
And the market for that
Cash in the
crashes. I mean, I don't think that storage is necessarily going to be the bigger issue, but I think that the market for that material would then crash. You'd have an excess in that area. And that would introduce a little bit of unpredictability into shipping lanes, for that matter.
The thing is,
Because if somebody finds, we need steel beams in hundreds of thousands of tons, and all of a sudden you have, a squad of, or a fleet of 50 MISC C-class hulls flying in there, you might crash that area's demand for that material. But that might mean the next part up of the supply chain can produce more of something else. So they need more of a different material because, oh, look at all of a sudden we've got all these hulls. Well, now we need more computer components to go into these. This could make for some really dynamic gameplay, specifically by screwing with players who bring vast quantities of stuff hoping to play the market.
the other thing, though, that would happen if there was non-real-time economic information accessible is people would either figure out how to hook into the economic system and pull that data manually and put it on a site like Star Citizen, what's the curse sites or the Alakazam, things like that. Or
Guru or whatever it is.
if somehow CIG completely protects that data so it's impossible to pull it automatically, there will be people who will sit in a system refreshing the thing and simply updating a spreadsheet somewhere, and then people will pay to get access to that instant spreadsheet. You know that will be the case. That will simply be the case.
It's relatively cheap to buy 2 or 3 starter accounts and then fly your Aurora out there, park it in the biggest
Multi-monitor?
economic systems, and then just multi-box it. So there are a lot of workarounds for it. So there is a problem. I kind of like the model Bridger came up with, where hey, we have this mission that goes out, and whoever accepts it first from the Merchants Guild. So like say a player or NPC factory submits it to the Merchants Guild charges their cut, and then players who have a high enough rank in the Merchants Guild for that kind of mission can pick it up. So now you got a reason to rank up in a Merchants Guild. So there's already now we got new in-game time sync. Plus you get more lucrative contracts. Then the model Gray had standing orders.
You'd also only be able to actually accept those kind of contracts through a third party, so you couldn't just show up with 200 tons of steel beams. You'd have to actually tell the Merchants Guild, okay, via communications, I'm bringing this in.
Yep.
That would make a lot of sense.
And via communications, the Merchants Guild receives a message from the factory saying, I need 400 tons of steel beams. They say, okay, that's worth like $2 million at current market rates. Only these like 10 people can qualify for that because they've got the rank to accept it. And they have the escrow cash to put into it, whatever it's going to be. So, yeah, I think that there's a good model actually for both. A standing order every factory has that just waits to go, and then a specific one-off contract for things you don't necessarily need a lot of, or you're really desperate, so you're willing to pay a very lucrative price above your standing order for that good.
All right, let's move on because we've got a couple more questions I want to talk about here before we close out the show. So, will the United Empire of Earth Naval Forces and the Advocacy, which is their police forces, be invincible, or so strong that they might as well be invincible? Or will it be possible for a strong player organization to actually attack them and kill them and win a battle until reinforcements show up?
So this is going back to Eve and Concord kind of thing.
It is, actually. Yeah, that's where the question came up.
Well, because in Eve, as let's get some background here before everyone else jumps in. Concord used to be not invincible. They were ships you could actually attack and defeat. And then after a while, more Concord ships would spawn in, but it was a long time in between those ships. And then some very strong players either got ships that were better than Concords, or got very skilled at it, or found an exploit to handle the Concord ships. So they pop into a newbie area and just began wiping out new players, which, as you can imagine, this is griefing. This kind of kills the game for new players. You're actually going in there to ruin someone's day for no apparent reason or benefit. So then that makes the argument, yes, the UE should be, truly invincible. But at the same time, that does kind of kill it. Or what if I'm a pirate? I want to go patrol those safer lanes and pick off ships because I'm just that strong or that good. But there's a different model with Eve versus the encounter system that has been proposed for Star Citizen, which is, you're flying out there, you get in that encounter bubble, and you form a new one. So I would say that if there is combat allowed in orbit of a planet, yes, there should be an extremely strong, if not invincible, NPC police. If it's in a high security area, a safe area.
We've already seen that in the lore. The most recent story that came out from CIG, they're talking about that reporter who's chasing dead pirates and all. Yeah. There's a planet-based cannon that blows her ship out of the sky. Spoiler alert!
That's true.
I mean, those exist. Plain and simple, they exist.
So
that probably means that if you try to screw somebody up in low Earth orbit, you're gonna have a bad time. I think that that's a really good solution to the leaving the UEE ships vulnerable, but incredibly powerful. Because let's be honest here, if you try to take on a military spec Hornet in almost anything, if the AI is smart enough, you're dead.
Yeah.
And that's really going to be the question: is how long does it take people to build up enough force to be able to take on full military spec UEE ships, which will be unquestionably superior to civilian ships you buy at first.
Go ahead.
But and then beyond that, there's a question of scale. The UEE isn't just going to have a squad of 3 Hornets in most places, though that may be the case in certain parts of the universe. You may end up fighting an escort carrier. And again, if you're going out there in a civilian spec ship trying to fight an escort carrier with all of its ships near it, that can call for backup, you're going to have a bad time.
I think they can do something where they sort of have their cake and eat it too. I think the advocacy ships could be, on par with player ships, and in fact beneath some of the strongest player ships. But the UEE naval vessels should be superior in the way that Gray is talking about, and they should be able to call in enough numbers that no amount of players are going to overwhelm them. But the first response to any, issue is always advocacy ships, and killing an advocacy ship has a massive penalty to you as a player.
It triggers the cascade.
Well, the main important piece here is, remember, you become shoot on sight if you do too many bad things in friendly, UEE controlled space.
Yeah.
So
not just shoot on sight, but hunted.
Hunted.
They will look for you.
The AI puts out patrols and bounties for you if you do too many super bad things. So it basically, you can. I foresee a system where it's possible that a bunch of players could get together in some cheap ships they don't mind losing and going in and having an invasion of Elysium, for example, and just messing up the UEE there and killing all the advocacy ships, and then a Bengal comes in and just destroys the hell out of them, and now their reputation is gone. They can't enter any UEE system without immediate naval backup arriving within 2 minutes. So now they have to, sort of work their reputation back up from the ground up, which is those systems are in place, right? There are ways to try to build up your citizenship, even if you're paying off people to do it. But
and you're going to bet you're going to lose a lot of money trying to start from, hey, my ship just got blown up by a Bengal, back to I can land on UEE planets.
Yeah. But the fact that you can bribe your way back in is kind of nice.
Yeah. The point is that these things should be possible but rare. And the way that you do that is you make them possible, but the cost, the penalty for doing them is so harsh that it's literally just impossible to do them there very often, because you'll just you have to spend time and or money, both of them which are equal to each other. You have to do that in order to build it up and do it again. So what that means, though, is if you always knew that in these systems you were perfectly safe from, a big player invasion or something like that, it would be boring. But once a month, somebody gets on the radio and says, "Holy crap, the Goonrathi are invading such and such. They're doing battle with the UEE Navy right now. They wiped out a bunch of noobs. Now they're doing this." That's an event. That's a procedural generated, player generated thing that's happening there. That's why we play these games. If you prevent that from happening, you're ruining the entire experience.
But then what's
One
the
would
benefit to
assume you would attack. I mean, if you were someone like Goonrathi, you'd probably attack a system that, if you could by some chance win, which may or may not happen, you never know, there would be some benefit to having it.
Yeah.
So not only is it an event, it's
You
an
don't think
event
they'd
that
just do it for the
kind of
lulz?
change the lore around.
They might.
Well, they might.
But you know what? I would love to see things like the UEE Navy being controlled by CIG, almost like a game master controlling them. Like moving them in and attack, doing an attack on the Vandal over here. And that means that they're not somewhere else, so that maybe the players will try to attack it or something. And the GMs can decide, well, it looks like the UEE is actually giving up on this system, and now the system is no longer controlled by the UEE. But later, another story event is they've decided they want the system back, and they're sending in a big expeditionary force. Like, there could be so many cool things that you could do beyond those once every month and a half events that Guild Wars 2 did that didn't really change much. Arg.
But if it's something interacted by human beings, like on a consistent basis, not just a one-off event like what Guild Wars had, but hey, I came in, I attacked the Advocacy, here comes a naval patrol, okay, I managed to beat them, here comes the carrier group. If it's interacted by GMs, I mean, you get what happened to Eve with that tier 2 tech stuff, where one of the developers or GMs was working with the particular guild or fleet.
I'm talking about as a singular entity, like the game master of an RPG. That's a good clarification.
Okay.
I didn't mean like the game masters being those tech support people that you call when you need help. I mean the top guys like Chris Roberts saying, guys, here's what we should do from a story perspective. This is what the UEE is doing. Like, as a singular entity, there's the guys at the top of CIG controlling it.
Yeah. That makes it a lot less exploitable at that point. So fair enough.
Guys, let's just have the UEE just partner with Goonrathi. Let's just see what happens. They'll hunt down all the civilians. Citizens are the only valuable to the people to the UEE. Civilians need to die. Oh, that would be terrible. Okay, last thing before we go. Let's talk about lock-on weapon systems. This is always a tricky subject, because if you play any game with any kind of lock-on weapon system, you always got to ask yourself, why is somebody not using the lock-on weapon system? The whole Titanfall thing with a smart pistol that would just insta-kill somebody if you waited a couple seconds for it to lock on started tons of threads where people are like, this is too strong. Others like, it's too weak, it's stupid, it's useless, I can shoot better than that. So how do you make lock-on weapons skillful is really the question.
If you don't have lock-on weapons in this game, that's immersion breaking. That we are, how many, 1,000 years into the future? Hell, we can lock on from across the world right now with forward scouts and drones and find the target and hit it. I mean, we need some kind of lock-on weapon, I think, period, for this. But if we have a dumbfire option, have it do a lot more damage. Make a lock-on require 2
How
or
is
3
that
hits to
thematic
kill.
and not break immersion?
Yeah, exactly.
You fit more explosives in there instead of guidance, I guess.
Exactly. All the half of your rocket is navigation computer, so you replace that half of the rocket with more explosives or more fuel, so it's faster or something. I mean, we're already World War II planes in space, which is a little bit immersion breaking. We won't go into that.
What I've always said, how you explain what you've just talked about, is that in the future, electronic counter warfare, the counter what do they call it?
Countermeasures?
Countermeasures. Electronic
Yeah.
warfare countermeasures are much stronger. They're winning the race essentially against the actual lock-on weaponry. So they have like radar jammers and all kinds of other things just can completely knock out or the super complex lock-on weaponry, leaving us with very weak lock-ons that can be dodged, or only you need to get within a certain range to fire, or they have only a certain turning radius. All kinds of limitations that make them more skillful.
Fair enough. And one way you can do skill, you actually mentioned it there just now, is you have to have your target or your reticle on target long enough for the lock to occur. Maybe it's a very strong missile or a missile you need to balance particularly well. If you have to keep your lock on until the missile impacts, so once it's away, you need to keep that laser guide on there. Actually, we mentioned the Phoenix earlier from PlanetSide 2, one of my favorite guns, or rockets from that game. For an anti-capital torpedo, I would love to see that the torpedo gunner has to pilot that thing in by hand with his stick and his remote control, and then maybe an EMP blast knocks out the guidance and it's dumbfire from there.
It already does look like that kind of thing is in place with some of the consoles we've seen.
Yeah.
Just, in passing. It's very likely we could see that sort of camera-guided torpedo thing.
And that's going to be awesome. That's going to be a lot of fun.
No, because it's even cooler if you have it like in Captain America, how Red Skull had those bombs that would be piloted by the actual people. You put a person in the torpedo and you give him a little bailout, like when you get within 100 feet, just eject. He gets sent backwards with the rest of the propulsion section.
Well, I do want to point out, over on Twitch, we just had a DMCA pop-up.
What does that mean?
Titanfall should not be broadcast at this time without the express written permission from Respawn EA. You risk a DMCA suspension if you broadcast before 12:01 a.m. Eastern 3/11.
Apparently talking about Titanfall pissed them off.
Wait, it
Nice.
said that
I can see
on
why
my
Titanfall in Titan. It's on my screen in Firefox.
Yeah.
A little pop-up there. So I want to say the
I
following.
think they just did that
Titanfall,
everywhere.
my Titanfall, EA.
So I think that was just a global thing. I thought you meant like my channel
I
was
thought
getting...
it was because we mentioned Titanfall, and then,
We
and
did.
then I noticed, I was like, what the hell?
The government is listening and its name is EA. Oh,
I
God.
wouldn't be surprised, honestly.
Now, something
back
that
to missiles.
Django actually mentioned over on YouTube is that guidance systems should be expensive, and I actually do agree to that. The hardware that would go into a missile to make it capable of following people with a lock-on should be relatively pricey.
There you go.
At least enough so to make it so dumbfire missiles would be the,
Standard.
even if they're entirely ineffective, much cheaper version. So if you were, per se, going to attack a big capital ship, you might only bring dumbfires. Because, I'm going to need 40 of these damn things, and I don't want to pay an extra 400,000 UEC on this attempt.
Well, and then there's a good use for the ship upgrades. Like, I'm upgrading my ship electronics to guide in my rockets. So the first level upgrade is that I have to keep you locked and fire it. The second level is it's a fire and forget.
You got to be careful with that, though, because then are you just handing the win over to the people that pay cash money to get credits?
No.
Well,
You're talking about countermeasures, too. I mean, if you have fire and forget missiles, it's very likely that there's some way to very, very easily stop a fire and forget missile.
A space flare, as it were.
Space Jam.
I mean, it's going to depend on your ship having countermeasures, but if we're talking about any semblance of realism, you're going to want to have countermeasures on your ship.
And they should be a lot cheaper than the missiles.
So
They would be a lot cheaper than the missiles. Almost plain and simple. A cloud of metal would be a lot cheaper than a radar-guided missile.
That's usually the case.
So here's my proposed concept here, and this came out within a long discussion with Ruach Blah from Team Legacy, where I was like, we were going back and forth about it, and he pointed out, what if you could shoot down the missiles? So firing a
think you
missile
should
at
be able
somebody
to.
who's coming right at you is stupid because they'll just shoot the missile down. You have to try to have the missile attack them from an angle they can't shoot it down from. So you got to try to get on their tail still. Or if if they're in a freelancer, they've got a tail gunner. So have fun with that. But that at least adds a skill-based situation where the person can try to shoot it down.
And we've seen that model in a single-player game. The X3 Albion Prelude, Terran Conflict games, they had missiles you could shoot down if you were quick enough. Or you could have a Mosquito, which is a tiny missile that would automatically fire if you had upgraded your ship enough. It would automatically fire out and hit incoming missiles as they were fired at you.
Oh, yeah, that's easy to pull off, and clearly an incredibly cheap electrical system that would have that level of guidance.
Yeah. So it would just tink, 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 but you had to have like 40 Mosquito missiles as opposed to the 10 actual like fire and forget missiles or MIRV clusters in that particular spaceflight sim. But it's an awesome concept. I would love to see in Star Citizen where you might have a gunner on, say, a Retaliator, and all he's got is anti-missile rockets. They would do almost nothing to his ship, but they sure do knock out missiles, and they're fast. Got to be fast.
Yep. All right. So, the missiles are just going to be difficult. But the point is, there should be some requirement for skill involved in shooting a missile. It shouldn't be a guaranteed auto hit. You should have to choose when and where to fire the missile to actually get a good chance of hitting. There should also be ways for counterplay to stopping the missile. It should be fun to try to counter somebody else's missile, whether that means you're dodging or you're firing and shooting it down or you're trying to time the flares just right, because if you do it too early, the missile will retarget you after it realizes it's a flare. All of those elements have some element of trying to get better at the game, have some kind of skill ceiling involved. And I think that's really what you're looking for when you're trying to design this game, because they've said that. They're trying to make every system in the game, even down to stupid little things that would normally in the past have been based on a number that goes up over time, like crafting. They want that to be fun. Plotting a new jump point, you're going to have to freaking go through a tunnel, like Descent style, to try to avoid, being destroyed.
So
Don't touch the wall.
Yeah. I can just imagine that. It's going to be great.
And I wonder, actually, now this is entirely rampant speculation, nothing to do with what we've talked about so far. When it comes to jump point exploration, if you've got that Xi'an, or Xi'an, is that what it is? Xi'an Scout?
Yeah.
Xi'an. Then, the Freelancer can plot them because it has Xi'an technology. And it's almost too big to go through them. And the Xi'an Scout is much smaller. Is that not the better exploration ship? Pure exploration ship.
It's called the
than
Scout.
the Freelancer.
I agree. I
Hard
think
to
the
say.
Freelancer is more multi-role. In fact, it wasn't designed. If you read the lore about the ship, it wasn't designed as an explorer. It was designed as a light trader, light mercantile. But a lot of people repurposed them for exploration because of a lot of factors that made them useful. A, they were cheap, and B, they had some Xi'an technology that made something about them cool. That's all I know.
And as Ty and Deer just posted in Twitch, don't you need supplies? Imagine a Fat Lancer could hold a lot more supplies than a Scout.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Scout
I'll
has
be.
a
I calling it
zero
right
cargo
now.
hold.
Nobody else is allowed. I'm patenting it. If you use a Fat Lancer to just hold mass amounts of missiles, that's my thing. I'm patent. Oh wait, they have a missile one, don't they? Damn it.
I mean, I guess you could put the missile stuff on a Fat Lancer and then be the world's largest suicide bomber. And
Yeah, just fill the cargo hold with explosives and crash into a Bengal.
Well, you
new
actually see
meaning to
other games.
torpedo boat?
Yeah.
All power to the
Arm all
frontal
the
shields.
torpedoes. Well, actually, in that case, maybe we should start putting like a Freelancer's blades at the front just to ram them.
Side style.
It's like the
Oh,
side
man.
style.
All
They
right,
can rotate. That makes it better.
that's true. Give him a crazy Ivan.
Uh,
All right, so I think we're just about done here. We don't have a lot else to cover. Huh. So why am I hearing myself when I turn this up? That's the question.
you're hallucinating.
Fixed it. Okay. So,
There we go.
even though we had a flawless intro, now we have to redo the outro. Redo the whole show! I messed up the ending. All right. Thanks, guys, for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a thumbs up. go ahead and subscribe to us on our podcast, which you can find at talesofcitizens.com or in the show notes or in the description, whatever you're watching, listening to. Give us a review on iTunes. That helps us out a lot. Appreciate that. And you can follow us on Twitter as Bridger15, on Twitch as Bridger15, on YouTube as Sound Strategy Network. Team Legacy and Unrepentant Gaming are the other ones that we go by here. So I guess that is it. We've got the lore shows that just came out. We'll see you in 2 weeks where we're talking about exploration and detection. I am Bridger, signing off.
You guys have a nice night.
Sorry, guys. I didn't realize that I had set my volume control wrong, so I was blasting you.
And now, none of our listeners have eardrums.
No, that's
Well
only
done.
to you. That's only you guys. I have a separate channel.
okay.
I can hear exactly what's going out to the stream, so I adjust my main sliders off of that, but I have a separate volume control that sends out to you guys, and I had that set too high. My bad.
This was some personal loathing going on.
Yes,
I see how it
indeed.
is.
So we've got to figure out how to get your microphone closer to your mouth, Callie, and further from your
All right.
keyboard.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was being quiet.
Tap, 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 tap.
I was trying to answer some of the questions.
No,
in
that's
chat.
fine. There's nothing wrong with that, except that the microphone is right over the keyboard there.
You are correct. This new spot makes it right at the keyboard. All right, I can move the keyboard during the show, though.
Can you move the microphone further to the right, like over to where your laptop is, or is
I
the cord
can.
not long enough?
I can, but it would be the same problem, where it was over on the left before, now it's over on the right, and it would be the same issue where you couldn't hear me that well as opposed to right here.
Yeah, Gray
But I
was
can
still
just take the
louder than you. I was
keyboard
trying to
and
adjust it, but it
That's
was a good show. It was a good show.
You talked with me anyway, I know.
I thought we had some really great things to talk about. We're getting better and better at this. Some of
Pretty
the
much
earlier shows I
conversation.
was not as happy with, but the last 2 or 3 shows we've been nailing it every time.
But I've missed the last 2 and 3 shows.
Ah, you see how this works. No.
Okay.
All right. So thanks, guys, for joining us. Appreciate it. We had a lot more activity in the chat today. Maybe it's because I pimped the show in the backer chat.
Okay. That could
They
be
still
it.
have the chat roll. Did you see they still have the chat roll? They haven't fully replaced it yet?
No,
Really?
Yeah, if you click on chat on the Robert Space Industries site, it looks like that's the old chat roll. It's not the new XMPP chat. There's a button in the far right that says RSI Chat Beta. If you click on that, that pulls up the org chat that everybody knows and loves. Yes, loves.
Interesting.
So I didn't realize the chat roll still existed. I wonder if there's this whole level of interaction that I'm not aware of. Ooh, we are almost at 40 million. We might hit it tonight.
Yeah, we might. All right, I'm gonna
That
go
could
in.
happen. I could see it.
We're at 97%. Only need another $30,000. Who's got another $30,000 in their pocket? I see you,
It is
sir. I
only.
see you want to raise your hand. Come on. So let's start the bidding at $500,000. Okay.
Let me open the wall safe there.
Whew. All right. I don't know about you guys. I'm going to be playing Titanfall on Tuesday. I got the day off from work. I'm going to be playing it all day.
Oh,
I most
you
likely
have
will
fun
not
with
be-
that. I'm only working from 7 to 9.
Ouch.
Okay, I can see my cat might need some water here, so I'm gonna let you guys go.
Okay.
And, yeah, well, she just managed to crawl out of the bed I had her in, but she's looking
She
like she's not too
moved.
happy.
Oh, good kitty.
Yeah, she's not panting, but
That's-
that's not a good sign. All right, you guys have fun.
Okay. Thanks for joining us.
Let you know
Let
if
it
the
go.
cat doesn't make it. See ya.
Actually, Titanfall, I found out 50 gigabytes on your hard drive is how much space it takes up because 35 gigs of that is uncompressed audio, and that is composed of 7 different language packs, of which you only need 1, obviously. But it downloads all 7 because fuck your hard drive. Did you think you were going to have a solid state drive put this game on? No. Screw you. Whew. All right, we should get to our meeting. I'm going to cut the stream here. Thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you in a couple weeks.
See you guys soon.